Hi, I'm Charlotte Wilson-Hammond, and I'm the artist who's responsible for this body of work, Invisible. Invisible is an exhibition about becoming invisible as one ages. I think that's partly, that's certainly the impetus for creating the work. Around 2015, I started thinking about being old. Today is actually my birthday. I'm 79. And that seemed to me like an incredible, getting into your 70s, you start to break down physically. I had 2 shoulder replacements and arthritis, and I have COPD. And I found that as we age, especially women, we start to sort of be unnoticed unless we get in people's faces, patted on the head and say, "Oh yes, dear, how are you?" It's that sort of thing. And it really is a phenomenon that I think applies more to women than to men. So I was thinking about that and the fragility of the body, but the strength of the inner body. And one of the things that I notice is that you still feel the same inside. You're still you. But on the outside, everything changes and you're unable to do as much as you used to. So with that going on in my head, I then saw a dance piece called Dancing in the Third Act that was choreographed by Randy Glynn and presented by the Company of Angels in Annapolis Royal. And then they traveled the piece to Montreal. And it was all people over 70 who had never danced, and Randy Glynn got these guys together and created this phenomenal piece of art, which was poignant and hopeful and funny, and it just kind of confirmed all the thoughts that were going on in my head. Part of my practice over the last 50 years has been to use my own body in my work, going way back to the early 70s with female nudes and carrying on through the years, and in conjunction with the landscape. Landscape is, I see that as an extension of the body. Carrying on with those ideas, I bought an iPhone. And this was one of the most exciting things for me, because I could now take pictures without, bothering with f-stops and all of that stuff. And they were immediate and visceral. So I was photographing my shadow in the various landscapes that I inhabit, mostly all around Clam Harbor. And it just percolated from there. I mean, it just, these photographs on the landscape seemed to really say something to me about the idea of fragility, strength, invisibility, and all of that stuff. So then I guess I came up with the idea of having the photographs enlarged and printed at half the resolution, so that they were very, very faint. And then I had them blown up and printed on Mylar. I'm not sure why I chose Mylar, except that it has a sort of an ephemeral quality. And I continued to sort of look at these images and started to draw on them with colored pencil. And I basically just colored them, enhancing some things and pushing back other things, but all the pieces are actually colored from top to bottom, left to right. But the weird thing was that the Mylar took the colored pencil almost seamlessly. I mean, you really can barely see the marks, but they are there. People have said, "Well, where are the marks?" But they are there. So I started working on this in 2015. And I was working with a curator, Tila Kelman. Unfortunately, she was in a dreadful car accident in 2017 and ended up dying last year. from her injuries. She just had no more communication. It was just tragic. And somehow these pieces took on even more meaning for me because Tila and I had become, she was more or less my age, and we'd had many wonderful discussions about aging and all of that, arts politics and all of that stuff, and being a woman in the art world and so on and so forth. So the last piece that I did, I think it's number 14, which is right here, it is my shadow, but I took it in Mabu, which we spend a couple of weeks in Mabu every summer. And the shadow reminded me of Tila's shape because she was very tall and slender. And so this was the last piece, and it took me a year before I could actually work on it and finish it because it was so, poignant to me. I think my first body of work, first memorable body of work was female nudes that I did after I'd had my first child, or not my first child, sorry boys. I'd had 2 boys first, then I had a daughter with a second marriage. And I was this was in the late 60s or early 70s in Toronto, and I was so overwhelmed at having had a daughter. It felt very, very powerful, like really powerful. And I was a feminist. I am a feminist, which underpins all my, work over the years. But these female nudes were very sort of giant, and some of them hark back to, this work, I certainly can relate these to that older work. But they had that sense of power and gutsiness, I guess. The response to this body of work has been really interesting because I've had people come in and look, I've been sitting with the works at one of the shows, and people would come in and literally be in tears. I think these were sort of older people, women mostly, but it just spoke to them about the power of being a person, a woman, the struggle, all of that stuff. They couldn't really explain why, but people have been really, really moved by the work. And I think what it says, I guess taking the shapes of the land, which to me are incredibly feminine and sensual and warm and powerful, and imposing your shadow, which of course could be a metaphor for the fleetingness of life, really sort of speaks to, it speaks to feminism. And feminism, of course, isn't limited to men or women or anything else. I think it's ridiculous that there are people that think being a feminist or feminism is no longer valid, because it will always be valid. So yeah, I'm proud to be a feminist. Yes. Well, he's an integral part of me, and I really respect his opinion. I often, if I'm into a certain body of work, I will say, come see, what do you think? However, how to say, he is certainly a feminist, and incredibly supportive, and has been for the last 50 years. And he's also really gifted when it comes to constructing things. Like his background was engineering way back, but so he had the idea that this is an important part of this work. I had the idea that I wanted them to kind of float. So I wanted them hung and this was really a very important part of the work, because it extends the idea of the sort of ephemerality of life and all of that. So I wanted them hanging so they would float at the bottom. Gordon suggested that they be framed. I said, absolutely not, they cannot be framed. So he came up with this wonderful concept of hanging them with earth magnets, and he said, but we should anchor them at the bottom. No, I said, we can't do that. They have to move. And so it has really worked out well. And I don't know I mean, if I have a concept, a lot of the way I work is very intuitive. I don't have a college degree. I was a grade 10 dropout and kind of, took courses from various people over the years and then became an artist. I always wanted to be an artist. I always knew I had to be an artist. But Gordon has constructed these hanging mechanisms. So again, they just go up, they're there, and they float. And that's exactly what I wanted them to do. There's a quote that I heard, and I've tried to research it, and I haven't found the provenance of it, but it's, my shadow rests lightly on the land, fleeting and ephemeral. And when I heard that, and I probably heard it on CBC, went through my head, and oh my God, that's exactly what I'm doing. And I wrote it down, and I think it really says a lot about this work.
It does. Yeah. Very.
I'd love to know who said it.
Interesting.
And I haven't been able to find it.